because, you know, my queen. He doesn't even comment on how cheesy the show became when the doors to the keep flew open and Drogon was perfectly positioned behind her to make her look like she had dragon wings. Cirque du Soleil, I have a great act here for you, and at the climax, she kills the audience. Brilliant. Finally, an act guaranteed not to get any bad reviews, since the critics never make it out alive. So yeah, Tyrion goes to jail, and Jon visits him, and a dull and lengthy scene ensues that feels as long as the 14-minute tour de farce that opens the episode, though it couldn't possibly be. And at the end of that interminable and mind-numbingly boring scene, Jon says, "My queen," and skulks out of the cell. He goes to see Daenerys, who is in the throne room staring at the Iron Throne, and her only comment is basically, "I thought it would be bigger," counting swords and finding it mathematically disappointing. And here, yet again, is yet another circumventing of expectations, narrative, and common fucking sense, when after all that pain and death and bitching about how she will sit on the Iron Throne, she must sit on the Iron Throne, she never sits on the Iron Throne. She doesn't do what every single human being in possession of an ass would do, and sit that ass down on the Iron Throne. It's like being set loose on the set of Star Trek and not sitting down in the captain's chair. What kind of person does that? Especially a megalomaniacal queen who has dreamed of the Iron Throne the whole show. Iron Throne this, Iron Throne that, and she doesn't even sit on it once. Can you believe this shit? They can't even give us that. Let's say you didn't get your ass shot off in the war, and it's a structurally sound ass that can support your weight. Then you've tried out this ass for many years, and it's never let you down before. And you have an ass, and you have an Iron Throne, and there are no museum guards around because you murdered them all. And you're trying to tell me that you're not going to sit on that fucking chair. They can't even give us that shot of her sitting with satisfaction on her throne of ruin. So then Jon comes in and gripes at her some about killing everyone, and dear God in heaven, once again, the writers opt for the most shallow, easy, and disappointing approach to the scene humanly possible. They have Daenerys act mostly sane. She's not ranting, she's not furious, she's not clacking steel ball bearings together talking about strawberries. She isn't in the grip of space madness like Ren Hork. She isn't hugging the Iron Throne and calling it my precious. She's just matter-of-factly telling Jon some vague shit like it had to be done, and that's that. No glimpse of madness, no attempt is even made to make her confront the enormous monstrosity of what she's done. Jon Snow doesn't confront her and ask her to take a walk through King's Landing with him, challenge her to justify herself while stepping over dead children. He doesn't pick up a dead petrified kid and bring it to her, then dump it at her feet and see it scatter to ash. None of the things competent writers would have done. No, the writers staged the most tepid, non-confrontational, bland, and vanilla scene between Jon and Dany that any human being could possibly conceive. Given the enormous emotional and political stakes of the moment, I do not believe this scene could possibly be executed with less care or flair than this limp, dickless orgy of meh. And then, after all that, forgetting what a risk Jon represents to her, being the rightful heir to the throne and all, and ignoring the token reprimand he delivers to her, she kisses Jon and asks him to rule by her side, to help her govern, acting like nothing at all had happened and everything was just peachy, and they embrace, and we see a medium close-up on the two of them, and then Dany's expression changes slightly. She asks Jon, "Is that a dagger in my chest, or are you just happy to see me?" And then she starts bleeding ever so slightly from the edge of her mouth, answering the question for those in the audience who didn't see this coming from the moment Jon entered the room, a mile away. And she doesn't even say anything to him. Not an et tu blate, no famous last words, barely a change of expression. She just drops to the floor and bleeds a wee bit more out of her nose. Dispatched with even less ceremony than the poor Night King, didn't even get a special effects sequence as a lovely parting gift. Literally, people, this scene, which looked like it was a cheap cutscene from a video game circa 2009, could not possibly have been any more boring if it had been written by Wayne Brady on vacation with Jimmy Buffett and Barry Manilow, popping Xanax and huffing Dr. Scholl foot pads. And this was the dramatic highlight of this episode. Supposed to be one of the dramatic highlights of the entire series. Have you ever huffed a Dr. Scholl foot pad? Nothing happens because it doesn't get you high. It just means that you're bored so stiff you try to escape the tedium of consciousness by smelling a shoe insert to zero effect. Welcome to the final episode of Game of Thrones, boys and girls, where sniffing a shoe pad is equivalent. That basically describes this episode in a nutshell. Drogon, sensing a disturbance in the tedium, flies over to the point of least tedium, takes a sniff of the stiff, huffs, and decides, hey, fuck it. We'll never see Daenerys sit on the Iron Throne. Nobody wants it. I'll just melt the fucking thing and subvert all expectations that anyone will ever sit on the damn thing so that every single guess of every single fan about who would sit on the Iron Throne was wrong. Ha! Take that, Ruin Johnson. So he melts the throne into slag, picks up Dany, and carries her away, presumably as leftovers, to eat later. Yes, friends, at King's Landing you can get your barbecue to go. So you might well wonder at this point, what happens to Jon? How does everyone react once they find out that Jon Snow killed their beloved Hitler in drag? Sadly, we never find out because we fade out and then we cut to an indefinite number of weeks later when spring has returned to the land, I shit you not. We never see how anybody reacts to her death. We don't see the troops riot. We don't see them try to kill Jon Snow in revenge. We don't see the wailing and the gnashing of teeth as they mourn their beloved Khaleesi. We just cut to a time in the future when Tyrion's in a cell and he gets trotted out to a meeting of a bunch of people we no longer give a shit about, some kind of council with Sansa and Bran and Sam and Arya, and they trot out Tyrion in chains. And what follows is so boring that I may cover it in another video, or I may not, but Tyrion convinces them to name the vegetable buffet formerly known as Bran to be king. And he smirks because he knew it all along, and they send Jon Snow to be in the Night's Watch, but there is no Night's Watch anymore since, no more Night King, thanks Arya. So Jon pets Ghost finally, and moves up north with Tormund and Ghost, where presumably they pick out curtains together and live happily ever after. And that's the end. No kidding. That's what we waited for. A guy with the charisma of a turnip rules Westeros because Tyrion thinks he knows stories and won't do much harm since he's generally not paying attention, and fuck me, Benioff and Weiss have worked their magic. And Ruin Johnson drools with envy. Ta-da! Aren't you glad you watched for 8 fucking years? I will be discussing this episode live Tuesday afternoon on May 21st at 2 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time. So join me then to vent your frustration about this goddamn travesty, drink a toast to the death of yet another franchise, and find out where you can get a hold of some Dr. Scholl foot pads. From the center of the earth, this is Dictor Van Doomcock bidding you all, my friends, stay angry.
And welcome to All Kings Considered. It's our Game of Thrones after show where we break down the latest theories. The holy hell that is ending. That's the ending? Yeah, that too. Sweet release. And what's next for the land of Westeros? If you're joining us for the first time, sorry because this is the last episode, but we are live both on Nerdist YouTube and Geek and Sundry's Twitch, so be sure to subscribe, and that way we can take your comments and questions throughout this show. So hurry up and do that, because this is your last chance. Last night was the final episode of Game of Thrones ever, and that means it's time to break it down, so beware, like winter, spoilers are here. So with that, let's meet our panel. Joining us on the panel today is the prince who was promised, Amy Vorpal! Oh! Hey!
Y'all bitches, all right.
Stabby McStabface, also known as Sir Stabby McStabface. And returning to the panel, it's the first of his name, Dan Casey.
I was also promised that I'd be princed, but okay. Guess. Please, Valor, no more of this.
She's a writer and comedian who has been a guest on both Nerdist News Talks Back and Fangirling. Say hello to Riley Silverman.
Hey.
Hello. So Riley, what are you working on right now?
Right now, I am writing for Nerdist, and I am also on a Rat Queens role-playing game show.
Very nice.
So
Very nice. Where can people find that?
That is on Hyper RPG on Wednesday nights. At,
Very cool.
7 p.m. Pacific.
Awesome. And finally, she's written for everyone from the AV Club to Polygon to Nerdist.com. Please welcome Joelle Monique. How are you doing? So what have you been working on?
Right now, I'm doing a lot of interviews with the Hollywood Reporter. We've got Michael B. Jordan coming up next.
Now he's the real prince who was promised.
This was also my reaction when I received the email. I was like, oh, manners, gonna need to work on that.
Talk about Kingslayer.
Touche. That was good. And of course, let's not forget Leech Kravis, who will be finding your questions and comments in the chat and then volleying them to us. And then I guess we'll answer them. So with that, let's get into last night's episode. Now, without diving too deep into things, just let's get initial impressions out of the way on the final episode, which was called The Iron Throne. Let's start with you, Jo.
Yeah, okay. Wow. Underwhelmed is maybe the right word. Themes matter. I disagree with the Game of Thrones creators. And we didn't follow through on any of them. Somehow, Dany got the death that Cersei deserved. A lot of confusion. But ultimately, I really like those Stark kids, man. They're pretty spectacular. And so getting to see their send-off was somewhat soul-satisfying.
Yeah, okay. Oh, yeah.
I'm kind of like fine with it. Like I kind of feel like for me, even if we'd had the like quote unquote 20 episodes, 2 final seasons that we were talking about, that people always like say we should have had, I still think I think The Bells and Iron Throne would have been the exact same episodes that we got. So I feel kind of okay with it.
Okay. My interpretation is whatever. Amy?
I'm kind of with you. My expectations were a little low for it. So when, we got to see some success for the people, some of the people we were rooting for, that was lovely. My 2 main things were some of the dialogue was real weird, and 2, tick effing talk. It was like the pacing was real wrecked.
And like the revisit through King's Landing for a 3rd time.
My friend caught me. I fell asleep during we went back and watched it, but the Tyrion and Jon Snow conversation in the beginning that led off the entire. So I was like, oh wait, I don't know if I'm really tired, but golly.
I mean, listen, Jon Snow is an idiot enough that he did probably need to have it told to him 3 times for it to actually sink in.
She's back.
John, for the love of God, John, just listen to us. Dan?
Burn the city down.
To paraphrase Mance Raider, I'm going to give the viewers the biggest yikes they've ever seen. I hated it so much. I hated it. And this has been my favorite show for 8 years. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. I'm just like...
You know,
Lay it
Dan,
out.
I feel like I could have told you were going to hate it last week, but you had hope still, and I didn't want to take that
I
from
even
you.
went in with lowered expectations, but, oof.
Yeah. I don't want to get too crappy on it, because there were certain shots that I liked.
Yeah, it was cool. It was cool to see it.
The shot of the wings behind Daenerys.
Listen, make it a poster.
I actually kind of was like half and half on that.
Okay.
Only because I was like, oh, hello, Maleficent trailer.
Yeah.
That's what that was. But I mean, I get it. The fashion was like, oh God, where do I buy their clothes? Like, I don't want
Bran got a glow up.
Like,
Bran-
everybody looked amazing.
Yeah.
So, props
Robin and Aaron got up
props to the costume department. I actually, as much as I hated the way they died, I did enjoy the shot of Tyrion and Cersei and Jaime lying in the rubble and him crying over them. I'm like, if you have to play it out that way, then this is a good look.
Sure. It was shot well, yeah.
But that was kind of it. Anyway.
I like Chappelle in the chat saying, excited for the spin-off, Arya Comes to America.
That's exactly
Arya
the
goes
look
west.
that she had on her face. She's like, I'm just
You go
sailing.
from Westeros to Westworldsteros, and then you're right there. Pod is a
honestly,
tourist from Los Angeles.
There are
I feel like I was just
Lannisters
watching
in
the
America.
intro to an Assassin's Creed
Yeah.
iteration with her, and I'm like, oh, I'm
Can
in
you
for
imagine?
this
Can you
game.
imagine if she woke up in the God, what's the thing in Assassin's Creed? The device.
Oh, the Animus? Yeah.
You know the best parts of Assassin's Creed in the present.
I'm like, hey, let's just stop playing the game we're playing and walk out of the house for a little while. Cool.
What
let's
if
do
you
that.
can't run and you're wearing a hoodie for some reason?
This is where we keep our
Also,
gaze, though.
everybody's talking
Into
really.
it.
Everybody's talking. Just side note. Total side note. Everybody's excited for Westworld. I was like, meh. Watch Gentleman Jack instead. Anyway,
Yes.
over on Nerdist.com, Michael
That was
Walsh.
that discussion show.
That was a good good show, broke down the episode with his article, How the Finale Brought Its Stories to a Close. Basically, he argues that everything was wrapped a little too neatly and was a little bit Tolkien-esque. Would you guys agree?
I think, okay, so a couple of points on that. It's not Tolkien-esque, it's Lord of the Rings, the movies-esque, which is not what George Martin has said he's going to do for us. In the end, he's like, listen, guys, I'm going to get you, like, it's going to be a punch in the gut when the books end. You're going to feel it. They gave us, like, the Shire still intact, which is boring. And so I totally understand on that aspect, on that front, like, it is too much like the Lord of the Rings movies where everything feels way too wrapped up because we know this story continues. And they didn't give us a political intrigue for me to headcanon a future of Westeros, and that is a big problem in my book. I want to know what happens, or I want to at least be able to think about thematically what continues to happen post these changes. And I have no idea.
The worst ending of all was Grey Worm, where he was like, after all of these months of like having Tyrion and Jon in his grasp, he's like, yeah, I'm gonna go screw off to Nath.
I'm gonna go to my dead girlfriend's hometown.
Yeah,
I disagree.
oh my god.
So I
Actually,
think
that one didn't bother me that much.
here's my problem with Grey Worm. Why did you capture Jon? That
Yeah.
to me, that part of it is
and how
confusing
did you
as hell.
teleport to the top of the
Why, why weren't you guarding Dany? Why was she alone in the throne room and John's just like, I'm just gonna bring my sword up here real
Well, didn't
quick?
she call for him? That's
No,
why
I
he
don't
walked
think
in
so.
there?
No.
I could have sworn that she was like, oh. He
I
just
don't-
decided
No,
to
the
waltz
script
in.
called for him. But
Yeah.
she did not.
And then they have to meet in an isolated place where you want. There should have been a Grey Worm Jon fight. And either
Yes.
Grey Worm should have died at that point, or Jon could have died. I would have been fine with either.
Yeah.
And then they needed to either, or they could have gone their separate ways with some kind of understanding. But I think him going to Missandei's Island is honestly, he has no leader to follow. He don't
Yeah.
like any of these
Yeah.
people.
Yeah,
he was like, I'm
Davos-
not staying in the North. Like, screw
Yeah.
these racists. And so going to a place where they're, skills can be put to good use, and especially it's a nice way for him to honor Missandei. I like that part of it.
Oh, that makes sense.
The closest
I
we
kinda
get
saw
to
that
that
happening.
like scouring of the Shire that George R. R. Martin really wants to deliver in the books is the Brexit of Winterfell. Like,
We get to
that's
that
as
later
much
on in
political
this.
intrigue as
I'm
we're
really
getting.
into that.
Yeah,
we get to that
awesome.
later on in this prompter. All
I
right.
agree so
Coming
much
up
with
on
the
All
whole there's
Kings.
no intrigue to go into because I feel like what's going to happen is in a generation they're going to have a whole other struggle when suddenly now they have to like finagle between all these lords to decide who's going to be the next king of Westeros.
But who are going to be the major
Yeah.
players in that? Like Robin of Ant. Like, listen, I also
It'll
don't
be
think
their kids.
Yeah, I
we'll
think
get
it's
into the
gonna be a
whole
lot of fun.
council later.
Oh,
Otherwise, because that's
yeah.
where all
Oh,
of my
the
anger
council.
Right,
stems
so yes,
from.
let me move
Jackass
on.
and Honeycomb, the council.
We're moving on. Let's get into the biggest moment of the episode. After turning most of King's Landing into ash, Dany gets killed by Jon Snow after he has a long conversation with Tyrion, again, about why she's actually been the Mad Queen this whole time. Would you guys say you saw this coming? Wait, I'm assuming the death or the discussion, because we all saw the discussion coming for the fourth time, so let's just say the death. Did you see the way he killed her in the forefront, or was this a satisfying end to Dany after the 8 seasons that we've been with her? Who wants to go first?
How dare you give my dragon like the giver of dope speeches? She just gave one.
That was a good
no
speech.
words to go out on. She just gets stabbed, and then it's like, I guess that's it. Like,
Yeah.
what is
It's
happening?
time for not one, but 2 trickles of weird blood.
Just done. Like,
Very anticlimactic.
it's just like, so everybody knew who John's parentage was before we got there because we're book readers and we're obsessive and we're Wikipediaing things. We got that. We all knew that this was the story. Like, he was going to put his blade in her and that was going to be. So for them not to have any kind of conflict between the two of them, for her to be like, I just love you. I want to be together. Like, what did we just see on the stairs, girl? Like, I know you're smarter than this. I was very confused by the whole thing.
Yeah, and John, I didn't like any of it. I thought it was very anticlimactic. I thought it was like a weird, sneaky, like, I don't know, just sneaking. Like, I know he's trying to be sneaky, but it also was just like, what? Like, it just seemed weird.
Yeah,
I don't know what, it
I
just
think-
didn't make sense. And like you said, she wasn't able to say anything, which was odd. And also, like, up to this point, like, they hinted, like, everybody knows he's a Targaryen now, and it kind of didn't really mean anything, because then later on at the council...
Yeah, Varys
like,
sent out those
what?
tweets. Doesn't matter. They're just like,
What's
who
the
cares?
point of this? I'm not really understanding. What do you want to say?
No, like the main thing for me was again the pacing. Like we needed some like dramatic build up to that moment, and it really just felt like nothing, like a fart. You know, like Daenerys is fart dead.
Well,
you
and
know?
also, like, so if Drogon is so aware of symbolism that he can burn down the throne, like, why is he also just, like, chill comfortable with letting Jon just walk on by.
I saw
I
something something online. They're like, Drogon's looking at Dany's dagger sticking out of her chest. That's pointy. That's pointy. I must kill Throne.
I mean, gosh, that would actually make more sense to me than why he did what he did.
Yeah.
I believe the dragons, I believe in them being super insightful. Like we've had like examples of that in the past, but like then why is she just like looking at
The
Jon
only
like you
thing
seem fine?
that I could think of to justify that is that maybe he knows he'd be wasting his breath on Jon because since Jon's part Targaryen, he doesn't burn, I guess.
No,
and that's
Jon
why-
Why
burns
not
all right.
unleash that on
I
him
don't
anyway?
know.
Yeah,
Like I
Jon
feel
burns.
like as an audience, like whether he burns or not, either or would have been such a satisfactory moment
Yeah.
for us, the
Yeah.
audience. And you could have burned that chair right past Jon. Jon is not that big. It would have also
Or
burned
Jon's
his
like
fire
backing
blast.
up because he doesn't want, like, because Drogon's coming in and like stumbles onto the throne and then gets melted to
Melted,
the throne.
yes,
like
turning
yes.
ash. And I love Jon so much. I didn't want him to die, but after this episode, I was like, y'all should have killed him.
Absolutely should have been dead.
Also, the metaphor
yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
stick. Like the metaphor of the throne being melted, it's kind of like, wow, we're really gonna get like some weird democracy. No, immediately, no, not again. Like it's
there'll still be a king.
We're gonna
Don't worry
get
about it.
some
We just don't need a
king.
throne because he already has his own chair.
Yeah. Although I did like everybody laughing at the uncle when he tried to make a play for it. I was
yeah,
like,
that
oh,
Poor
was great.
Edmure Tully.
yeah. That was embarrassing. Like I felt that.
Sam didn't
so
need to
great.
get
I
his.
felt
Sam
like
doesn't
also
even need
waste-
Sam can just go Sam off.
Yeah.
Let's get into the other big moment of the show, the repercussions of Jon killing Dany, which then led to the meeting of the kingdoms of Westeros. The Unsullied had Jon in captivity, and Tyrion was still a prisoner, but was still allowed to attend the meeting. I took that to mean that they were both supposed to be there because they were going to rain down, judgment, but for whatever reason, Tyrion got brought, and Grey Worm, I don't know, whatever. Grey Worm, like, you gotta let that go, dude. Did you like the time jump and skipping the reactions of people actually finding out that Dany had been killed?
No.
We really needed more time of Tyrion talking about what was wrong with Dany. So I'm glad that we got more of that in there.
Yeah. What? Why? Look, I love Arya, but why was she at that meeting? She holds no lordship or ladyship. Like, I have so many questions about that scene. The water bottle, for example. Like, it just seemed very ham-fisted. Like, from Sam suggesting, like, what if we invented democracy?
Listen, what a waste
That
of my
was so
goddamn
crazy.
time.
Yeah.
Why are we here? What are we doing? Like, to me, and again, this is not the interesting
sloppy.
aspects of to me, okay, D&D were like, yo, we're not really into the magic aspects. It's not really for us. We came here for the political thriller. This was your political thriller? This was your end game plan. It was like, well, we'll put a guy who can't have children on the throne. That'll solve our problems. No, that's sort of how we ended up here. Like, who's a legitimate heir? We're not quite sure. A lot of people sleeping with other people. Who has the right to rule?
And now the way that Bran got it was like, number one, have a terrible childhood. Number two, learn literally everything about the entire race of people. Number three, shut the fuck up. Like this guy didn't talk forever.
He was missing for an entire
had no
season.
personality,
Here's
and
my
now
thing
you're
about
the
this.
king.
Have you guys ever
more...
thought that maybe Bran voluntarily let everybody die and kill each
I
other
will
because at
say-
the end of the day he knew how it was going to play out and he's like, ha ha ha, and he's actually super evil?
Okay.
This is my new favorite fan theory.
Bran, okay, this might be for more a later moment, but like I feel like that ending was really satisfying for me because I don't think Bran really is the king. I mean, like, yes, he has a crown and he's the king. Tyrion is now leading Westeros, but he'll never get the credit for it. I found that fascinating. Like when
Like,
Tyrion,
that's the punishment that he was talking about?
Like when Tyrion says like the whole thing about well, I just had it in my head about Bran has the best story. Yeah, Bran is the easiest to sell to Westeros, but Bran doesn't even stay for the council meeting. Like, he's not even there making any decisions about it. Tyrion is now, he has the task of having to fix and rebuild Westeros and create a whole new society, essentially, with them now.
Ooh, I like
but
this
he's not even
take.
in the book. So I was like, I love this part of this.
I like
story.
this take. Okay, you brought me on
Yeah.
board.
Yeah.
I'm on board.
But on its face, just making, like, Wikipedia, like sociopathic Wikipedia making him the king. It was just so frustrating. Because to me, I understand, I really like that reading of it, but it devalued so many storylines. Like Jon's entirely what's the point of him even being Targaryen?
But that's
at
been
that
this
point?
story the whole time. Like the beginning of the story was Ned Stark. You're like, oh, he's going to be the hero that rises up. Boom, he's dead. Robb Stark becomes the king of the North. He's going to be the avenging son. Boom, he's dead. That's Martin's work there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how much of this is going to be what's in Martin's books, but I feel like Game of Thrones has always been, we're going to tell you this character has destiny, and then we're going to take it away from
I
you.
have
I'm
heard
not-
a rumor. I heard a... Oh, we can't sing.
Who can't?
I stopped myself. That the rumor is, I don't know if I can say it.
Oh my
Say
gosh,
it!
Jessica, you can't just say
Sorry.
something.
All
and
right.
not-
Oh, wow.
Okay. Now,
Wow.
here's the thing.
I heard
Much
a
like
rumor- okay,
repeatedly
but-
on Game of Thrones,
Da-da-da-da.
information is teased and then doesn't pay off at all.
That actually is true. And it's not like something that nobody else has heard before, but that the reason everything was rushed and kind of so ham-fisted was because there were certain points that Martin wanted hit on this last season so that could also tie in with the books, and so they had to do a retcon rush job to get it to work.
I don't buy that because more seasons of Game of Thrones would only benefit Jar Jar Martin in the long run because he needs more time for his books. He wanted to go
That,
for
I
like
didn't
10
even
seasons.
get the joke you made until just now. I was like, oh yeah.
He has
would
also
also-
like said he wanted him to go like 13 seasons with it. Like he wanted him to stretch it out. Like he wants him to write the way he does, which is follow every possible
Yeah,
thread.
my
So it's-
Well, I
biggest
was trying to
issues.
save him, but
Yeah.
apparently I can't. So
My biggest
Way to
issues with
F
this
up.
with the show and these final 2 seasons are purely due to Benioff and Weiss wanting to go play in a galaxy far, far away.
I agree.
Like I don't understand
Yeah.
why they didn't hand the reins to Brian Cogman, the person who's written more episodes than anyone else, who was handpicked by Jar Jar Martin to write a spin-off series. And then, like, why not just sit back and collect massive paychecks while you go off to do these other projects? I don't get it.
And also, if it ends up being like people don't like it at all, then you get all the credit for like, oh, Benioff and Weiss should
Oh,
have
this
stayed on
one
the
the
show.
show. This one the show jumped the
AKA
shark.
Dexter.
Yeah.
So,
But
like,
here we are with three.
John's a lumberjack.
We have 3 great episodes. We have 2 pretty
oh my
solid.
god, yeah,
he left his baby in charge of sociopath and went off to the woods. What do you think's gonna happen?
At least his sisters lived.
Yes.
I would say, yeah, our first 2 episodes of this season, as contested as they were, super solidly written. For us to then sort of falter on 3 and then just crash the last 3 episodes, it's confusing to me how nobody stepped in and was like, I feel like maybe the structure of this could be better. Why we have so many lingering shots that are giving us no new information? Like if you're rushed. To me, the problem is if they were rushed, we would have had a lot of stories that we were trying to comprehend that weren't quite making sense. But instead, we've had less characters than we've ever had before. We are dealing with less conflict than we have in a long time, and we aren't building to any kind of solid conclusion. It's just, well, Bran's on the throne now, and everyone's sort of scattered to the wind. It's the least satisfying ending I feel like they could have
And
produced
also,
for us.
I mean, that decision making of kings. That's how the Iron Islands decide their king. Like this isn't a new thing that they've just developed. They didn't break the wheel. They were just like, we're gonna borrow that other
That's how the Night Watch did it too.
Yeah.
With everybody though, like I don't know why Sam didn't go. No, we do this at the Night's Watch, and it worked out. We got Jon Snow, so I'm just saying. Like,
I mean, the Dornish weren't even willing to be like, maybe we should also succeed because we hate you. Like, it just, nothing makes sense.
Did you
lost
guys
signal.
like Sansa pulling a Brexit?
yes,
Yes.
Me
Of
too.
course.
Yes.
That was lovely.
Yeah.
I like that everyone else there's like, we can do that? We can just
No,
be
she like
independent?
saved it till the end. Everyone's like, aye. She's like, okay,
Yeah.
now that it's all locked in, I'm psyched. No.
Y'all need to vote smarter.
Well, it's actually super smart of her because she essentially then turned to the king and was like, brother, who I love, and we've
Yeah.
got a good relationship. I'm gonna go take our lands. Like 1,000 years we were free. You know that because you can see it.
You were
It's
there
good.
for it.
It's okay, right? And he was like, yeah, you're my baby sis, whatever.
I
do what you want.
actually kind of
Great.
saw it as a power move too, because I think, especially with the way that she talked to her uncle and the face that she had, that she was pretty convinced that she was going to be.
And why shouldn't she
queen,
be?
and yeah, exactly. Why shouldn't? But she wasn't. So she had a backup plan, which was Westeros. So she still gets a crown. Might not be the crown she wants or deserves, but it is still a crown, and she's gonna rock at that job.
Someone
I
mentioned to me
just
that
think
Westeros
that-
is
yeah.
larger, or Winterfell's larger than most of Westeros.
The north
too.
is like the largest area.
Yeah.
It's like bigger than most of the country. But my
But
thing
nobody
is like,
uses it.
I just think
until they find oil there,
Yeah.
and then it's gonna be worth
Yeah, they're gonna
a lot.
they're gonna
Sansa's
frack the
arc.
last hearth.
Sansa's arc is the most strong through line of the entire series. Like, she's the one who began the series riding south to become the Queen of Westeros, and she was going to be like a figurehead. She was going to be the wife of the queen, but she comes back to her home that she didn't really want to stay in when she was younger, and now she's in charge of it. And